Welcome to the kickoff to the Wisdom of the Hive. It's a series conceived by Michelle Cassandra Johnson and Reimagine to face our fears and our futures together. If you can turn your cameras on, it would be great to see you. We also understand that you may be in a place or a position where you can't do that, and that's fine. My name is Andy Engel, and I lead the virtual public programs here at Reimagine. For those who don't know, Reimagine is a nonprofit that brings people together in facing grief, loss, and adversity, and mortality. We encourage participants to take small, sweet steps and to pace ourselves as we channel life's individual and collective challenges into meaningful action and growth. Everyone is welcome here. We're eager to gather folks of diverse backgrounds, different ages, different races, different faiths, people of no faith. At Reimagine, we transform grief into growth, turning life's hardest moments into opportunities for creativity, connection, and flourishing. And now for a little bit of hive keeping. I want to tell you what kind of space this is. It's a space that cultivates compassion for others and for ourselves. Most of us have arrived here with some kind of pain in our hearts, so let's be compassionate with one another. Let's choose to respect and welcome everyone gathered here today, regardless of belief, nationality, or ethnicity. And finally, this space is not perfect. We might fumble, we might fail, we might offend, but we ask for your grace. What kind of space this isn't? It's not about blaming. It's not about imposing beliefs on others. It's not about providing solutions or fixing things. Another thing I want to emphasize is that although this is not a political space, it is a space to cultivate social justice. Our colleague Mazen Jamal has offered this definition of justice. It's, quote, an environment of integrity and wholeness achieved through healing and transformation. When justice is present, we can trust that our safety and well-being are valued in a community or society. So this is our aspiration for tonight. What's going to unfold? So the program is about 90 minutes long. Sadly, Ahlay could not join us tonight live. She lost her voice last weekend at a community grief ritual that she was leading. However, Michelle will lead us in a listening and meditation using one of Ahlay's songs. And I just heard back from Ahlay that she will join us for the December 17 session of Wisdom of the Hive. The centerpiece of tonight's program is a fireside chat between Michelle and Lama Rod Owens. We'll have some time for questions for them, and then Michelle will lead another mindfulness practice. So a bit about Michelle. Michelle Johnson is an author, activist, spiritual teacher, racial equity consultant, and educator, and a healer. She's a Reimagine collaborator, and this is her second appearance as a guest speaker. Also, Lama Rod Owens, his second appearance with us. Michelle has led transformative work dismantling racism and systems of oppression, disrupting the wellness industry to make it more inclusive and accessible, and creating space for healing in so many ways. And through her work over 2 decades as a clinical social worker. Michelle's work centers on healing from individual and collective trauma, returning to wholeness and aligning the mind, body, spirit, and heart. She has a new book, The Wisdom of the Hive, which you'll hear about. I want to thank Michelle's publisher, Sounds True, and Lama Rod's publisher too, for helping to spread the word about this series. My colleague, Dara Cosberg, who is helping out tonight, you'll hear more from her later. She will paste a link in the chat for a discount code on Michelle's book if you're interested. And now I'm going to hand this off to Michelle.
Thank you, Andy. I love your bee sweater. Thanks for being in the spirit of this. And welcome, everyone. And thank you, Lama Rod, for being here with me. I'm so excited to get into conversation with you and all of you. It is lovely to share space with you and be in community with you. Um, my name is Michelle, and my pronouns are she and her, and I am on the ancestral land of the Catawba, Cherokee, Tutelo, Saponi, Occaneechi, and many other tribes in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Um, it is about a little after 6, so the sun has not yet gone down, but I can tell it is about to. And I could definitely feel fall in the air today. It was very cool this morning. And some of the footage that was playing at the beginning when folks came into the meeting was from today. Actually, I went out to visit my hives. I have 5 of them, which I'll share more about in just a little while. Um, and they are definitely preparing for actually winter. They prepare well in advance for the seasonal shifts. So I told them I would be here tonight and that I would talk about them. And I'm excited to do that and to see what we can get into and also about this series. I'm also sending honeyed thoughts to Ahlay. I have had the honor of I've been in space with Ahlay before during a training about a song circle and how to lead song circles, and it was one of the most transformative spaces I have ever entered. And um, I was excited to invite Ahlay to be part of this because her gift of bringing song and holding grief and tending grief and transforming spaces is so potent. So Ahlay is with us in spirit. And with that in mind and heart, we're going to offer a song that is one of the first songs. I think it is the first song I heard by Ahlay. And it's called Carry This All. And so I just invite you, as we're coming from different places, to take a few deep breaths, to take in the sound, the words, the tones. And then after the song is completed, we will invite you to share something in the chat. I think Andy has it queued up.
All alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone. You do not carry this all alone. No, you do not carry this all alone. This is way too big for you to carry this on your own. So you do not carry this all alone. You do not
I invite you to take a deep breath in the resonance of that medicine, and a deep breath out to take a moment to notice what arose within you as you heard the words, as you felt the words. Take a moment to notice now what stirs within you. And take a moment to notice your heart, your spirit, your bones. Take a moment to notice what you carry. And even though you may not be able to hear others breathing in this space, in our boxes, in our bodies, know that you're not alone. And as Ahlay so beautifully authored through song and sentiment, that we actually aren't designed to carry what we weather on our own. Take another deep breath here. And then if you feel moved, there's an invitation to put something in the chat as a check-in to just let us know where you are. You could share a sensation, you can share an emotion, you could share a color that maybe arose for you. We'll give you a minute to do that, and I'll read them aloud as they come in. Light, gratitude and uncertainty, goosebumps of resonance, tears, openness and despair, unity, stillness, relief, comforted. My heart felt less pressure, softness and release, connection, lots of gratitude, held, gratitude for the reminder we're not alone, interdependence, helpful reminder, receptive, blue skies and gray clouds. Give you another moment to fill those in. Felt surrounded by my ancestors. The prompt was a feeling or sensation that arose for you or is stirring within you now. Thanks for your question, MC. Being held, connection. And this might continue to come in through the chat, joy and love. Thank you. And so we can notice those as other people share what comes in. And I see despair. I have to carry this all alone. Thanks, Sue, for sharing. I feel grateful to be here. That's the feeling I have. And Ahlay does quite a lot of work with whales and whale songs. And so the first time I actually heard Carry This All, and I didn't know Ahlay or anything about her, I think I felt the whales. And it was so moving that I was on a road trip and I kept listening to that song over and over and over. It moved me that much. And then, of course, started to say, who is this person and when can I be in space with them? So we thank Ahlay for being here in spirit. I also see deep breaths. I'm enough. Take time to be still. Thank you, folks, for continuing to check in the chat. I'm going to share a little now about the wisdom of the hive. And then Lama Rod and I will be in conversation about the more than human world, um, about grief, about what we carry, about practice as well, which can help us respond to what we carry or to put something down if possible. In my experience, that's how I think about it. Even recognize what we've been asked to carry and then to make choices about that if we can. It's not always the case, depending on what's happening within your life. And the Wisdom of the Hive, as Andy mentioned, it came out in May of this year, and I co-wrote it with my best friend, Amy Bertain. We are both beekeepers and really students of the bee, I would say. And the body of work that we've been engaged in for several years, well before we decided to co-author this book, is based on the lessons we can learn from the bees and really the more than human world. But we use the bees as our teachers. The bees came to me many years ago in what I think was a dream, although I don't remember the details of the dream. But something prompted me to, without much consciousness or awareness, order what one needs to care for bees, including the bees. It was early in the morning, it was 4 a.m., and I was typing on my computer and going to different websites and getting all of the things, the boxes, the bee suit, the bee tools, and then ordering the bees as well. And I didn't really know what I had done until I saw the credit card receipt. And that is when I actually realized I had decided to become a beekeeper, or the bees had chosen me and had chosen to come into my life more deeply. I had never taken a beekeeping class. I hadn't really even thought about tending bees before that moment. That was in 2019. And the bees arrived, and I started off with 2 hives, and now have 5 hives in my backyard. I've lost some hives, and there's been deep grief around that because often when we lose hives, it has to do with climate chaos, which is one of the topics we will explore through this series in December, and the grief around that. The ecosystem and what we can feel in our bones is shifting due to human behavior and human impact. And my bees, as I mentioned, are preparing for winter right now. They started that actually before the turn of fall, because it takes them a lot of time to prepare for the contraction of of winter. And what's happening right now is the queen is not laying any eggs or very few eggs. She's already laid eggs for the winter bees. And I love the idea of winter bees because they live for longer. They are meant to get the bees through winter, the coldest, darkest time. They're designed to be a bit hardier. And I think there's a lesson in that for us as humans as we respond to this dark, cold time, full of chaos and grief, yes, and heartbrokenness, or brokenheartedness. And so I like to think about those winter bees as teachers for me, and what can I do to embody their tenacity to show up and respond. The bees are also gathering their final bit of forage. There's a weed called smartweed. They're little pink flowers. I've never seen them in my yard before, and this year the backyard is covered in them, and the bees are all over the smartweed. And so I'm excited that they can forage and use less energy by foraging in my backyard. They're bringing in pollen, a little bit of pollen, and they're still bringing in tree resin to make propolis to seal their hives. It's also cold enough in the mornings now that they form a cluster to stay warm, and then they spread out a little bit as the day warms up and the sun warms their hives. The themes that are explored through this series are the themes that are in the book, The Wisdom of the Hive. So we're here tonight to talk about the more than human world as a teacher. And I'll share some of the lessons I've learned from the bees about collective well-being and unity consciousness. And we will also explore birth and death. These are cycles that they work with a lot, particularly if we think about the shift in season and expansion and contraction that happens. But the bees also have what are called undertakers in their hive who take out the bees that die. And this time of year, when it's cold in the morning, they bring them out to the landing board. And when it warms up, they actually take those bodies away from the hive because bees like to keep a clean hive. And that's a practice that they engage in. And with that, actually, while I'm talking about it, the bees all play different roles. Some of the video that was playing at the beginning, there were some bigger bees. Those were drone bees, male bees. And most of the bees that you would see, the honeybees, are worker bees, are bee sisters, are females that sustain the hive. The drones are getting kicked out of the hive right now because that's part of the bees preparing for winter. And the worker bees are fastidiously working to make sure that they have what they need, the resources and the protection, the seal in their hive to stay warm and to make it through this season. The other thing I'll name about the wisdom of the hive is I mentioned unity consciousness. So bees operate as a superorganism, which means that a bee does not think of themselves as a individual at all. They think about themselves as an extension of the hive. So there's no individualism. There is what does the hive need and what role can I play to support the hive? And something I often think about related to that is a bee's life cycle, other than winter bees, which is winter bees live for about 3 to 6 months, depending on the region in which you live. Worker bees, the rest of the year, live about 6 weeks. And so often they're laboring in ways that will support future generations, but that they will not benefit directly from. So the nurse bees tending the babies, the undertakers taking out the bodies, the honeycomb builders, the bees who attend the queen and make sure that she has what she needs. And she obviously plays a vital role within the hive. Foraging is the final part of their life cycle where they go out and gather resources, nectar in their honey stomachs, and pollen and water and tree resin to make propolis to support the hive. But again, it's likely that they will transition and die before they directly benefit from that. And I think there's a lesson in there for us. The other lesson I'll share, there are two, and then we'll go into our conversation, is that bees attune to one another through sound and through movement and through pheromones, which humans actually do as well, all of the time. We can see this in the honeybee hive. And what I like to mention attunement because there's so much dysregulation right now. And I'm not sure it's new, but in every space I'm in, there's a lot of dysregulation in the nervous system. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Me too. I feel that in my body, my bones, my cells, my tissues. And there are practices that we can engage that help us attune to one another and help us downregulate together so that we're not reacting, right? Or I was in a session earlier today where someone was talking about, like, I don't want to come out sideways and like bleed on other people energetically. Like, we have to do our work. And Lama Rod, I know you talk about this. Like, we have to do our work so we don't become other people's work, is what I've heard you say before. And I think one way that we can begin to do our own work is to attune to ourselves, like what's present, what's here, and we can then attune to one another, which to me has required some like practice in slowing down enough to notice I'm in relationship with other humans and the more than human world, and to also ask myself, what is my place here? The final theme I just want to uplift here, and there are 1,000 more in the book, is this practice of telling the bees, since we're here to talk about grief, to be with our grief, to be here at this time. There's an ancient practice called telling the bees. It shows up in different traditions, and it is a practice where initially it was really focused on grief and death, where if there was a death in the family or the community and bees were around, that one was supposed to go and share that news with the bees by knocking on the hive and telling them about their grief so the bees could carry it with us. And because they work between realms and are psychopomps, so they can work with energy, and I think have a great capacity to hold grief, because it's likely they're responding to it all of the time. This telling the bees ritual has expanded throughout time to, yes, grief and loss, but also celebrations and unions and joyful things as well, to invite the more than human world to be with us in our aliveness, to be in relationship with us. So I just wanted to mention that. And I know Lama Rod and I are going to get into a conversation. So I'm going to turn it back to Andy. I also see in the chat about the promo code. We will get that fixed. Not sure what's going on with that.
Thank you, Michelle, for that overview. And now a few words about Lama Rod Owens. Lama Rod is a Black Buddhist Southern Queen, an international influencer with a Master of Divinity degree in Buddhist Studies from Harvard Divinity School. He's a leading voice featured by various national and international news outlets. He is the author of the bestsellers, The New Saints, From Broken Hearts to Spiritual Warriors, and Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger, and he's the co-author of Radical Dharma, Talking Race, Love, and Liberation. His teachings center on freedom, self-expression, and radical self-care. Delighted to have you back here, Lama Rod. You are muted.
There we go. Thank you, Andy. Yeah.
All right, Lama Rod, here we are. I'm so happy to be in space with you, in community with you. I shared a lot of themes from this work with the bees, this practice I have, this relationship with the bees. And there may be something that stirred within you that you want to respond to. And I wanted to start off. The bees are some of my teachers, as are the trees and the songbirds and bodies of water. Really, everything in the more than human world. I'd love to know who your teachers are from the more than human world to begin the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Michelle. And always a huge shout out to all the labor that you do to get us free. I'm always shouting you out, uplifting your work, directing people, to the spaces that you're organizing and holding as well, right? Which is an incredible amount of labor, right? And so just deep gratitude for what you offer to our liberation. And first, what comes to mind, of course, is the land, right? And for me, I am being held and tended to by the sacred ancestral lands of the Cherokee, Creek, and Muskogee communities and people who are still here, but who have been deeply decimated by these systems of violence, right? These lands are also the land of many generations of my ancestors, particularly my ancestors who were held captive as enslaved people on this land. My ancestors are buried in this land that has been so deeply caretook by the indigenous communities. And so for me, the land is my teacher, is my mother. The plant life, our plant allies are a tremendous teacher for me as an herbalist, a spiritual herbalist. I have been called back into relationship with our plant allies, right? And I think as Black people, African descended people, like this is how we practice liberation, is being in relationship to the land, to our plant allies, with our animal allies and relations, as well. I call all of this work a kind of re-indigeneity, of returning back to relationship, communication with the more than human world, with our allies who are asking to share their medicine with us, right? The bees are such a powerful example of animal relations and allies who are asking for us to listen, right, to how they work collectively in mutual aid and survival and thriving. To be able to partner with the more than human world, right, to reflect a real sense of healing, groundedness, stability is incredibly important in this time of what I call apocalypse, a systemic collapse, right? We are, I think, collapsing back to a real kind of indigeneity that will be the medicine that will save us, right? And our animal and plant allies, the bees especially, are showing us how to do that, right? How our bee allies are saying, listen, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us, right? And I think that kind of empathy, that kind of collectivity is what's really missing in our human community right now. Our oneness, right? Our usness instead of our me-ness, you know? These are the lessons that I'm really learning, right? And if you want to go even further, right, for me, it is the spirit of the land, the spirit of the elements, of the waters, of the fire, of the air. It is our ancestors who are calling us back, right? Who walk with the plants, who walk with the animals, who walk on the land with us, guiding us, directing us, right, into healing and to awakening. Um, we are called to be students right now, right? To listen, to learn, to allow our hearts to break open so it can be held and tended to by the deep care and the wisdom of our more than human relations. Right? So that's where my learning is coming from right now.
Mm-hmm. So much in what you shared about the land, our disconnection from it, our return to it, our reconnection to one another and the land. And what you shared, our relationship and how to be in relationship, how to be students.
Yeah.
Um, and you're reminding me of one of the teachings that I learned after I did take a beekeeping class from a natural beekeeper, which means a teacher who is more aligned with
Mhm.
um, the laws of nature and balance versus extraction,
Yeah.
and taking from the more than human world. And she said this thing in the first class, and she said, "What if the bees are here to save us?" And
Exactly.
it like flipped my whole world. It made me, I had never thought of it that way, and no one had ever posed that
Yeah.
question to me.
Yeah.
It shifted everything. And I thought, of course, I don't want to lay that burden on the bees. And also, she was saying, we think we're here to save them. And they actually have a lot of medicine and so many lessons to share with us. And they are mirroring to us through colony collapse or beehive collapse. Um, and related to climate chaos, they're mirroring our, like, what's breaking apart for us too, what's falling apart, what's collapsing. They're also mirroring how we're in deep relationship with all things because of the way they relate to one another and the ecosystem, every part of it. They're
Yeah.
in relationship with the sun and the seasons and the water, and they have to gather resources, right? They're attuned to these things in a way that I feel like when you spoke about the land, and what we're beginning to remember, this is why we need to attune to what is around us.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's really important, how you're lifting up this lesson, this teaching that, oh, we think we're here to save, right? But when we study indigenous wisdom, we understand that human consciousness is like a little lower than plant and animal consciousness. So who are we to think? Like we're the ones who got disconnected. Like we're the ones who forgot our creatureness, our relationship to the natural world and to the more than human world. And it's this disconnection that's created the chaos, that's created the collapse, right? And so we need to do a lot of work around hierarchy and status to remember our place in the ecology, the natural ecology, the spiritual ecology, right? To remember that we are students right here, and we think about climate change and climate collapse, right? I'm showing up more and more these days and saying, listen, like, who's trying to save who? Because this planet and this land is way older than humans. It's way older than organisms, right? So, like, who's trying to save who? Like, listen, the Earth has only to do but like drop it like it's hot for a second, and we are extinct, right? And this planet goes on. So maybe it's that we're trying to save ourselves, right? And what does that mean to save ourselves? Like in all of this, it means that we need to remember the order of things. Like we need to remember that we're not here to dominate, to control, to abuse, to use, to overconsume. We're here to live with, to be in relationship with, to listen with, right? To practice harmony, to practice balance, right? For me, the balance is powerful wisdom, right? How do I live with? How do I develop a deep sensitivity to how I impact others around me, right? Which, in a really spiritual sense, we call that empathy, right? And I think that empathy is in short supply right now. Mhm. Like we're not that interested in feeling into how other beings are experiencing our impact. We're experiencing a real kind of selfishness, right? That limits this perspective, right? But that limiting of perspective really it creates the violence that the rest of the ecology and the natural world are struggling to bring back into balance, right? So we're the problem, right? And so when do we stop and listen, right? When do we like slow down and stop consuming and instead begin to tend to all of our brokenheartedness, our grief, our pain, our suffering? Like, how do we tend to that? And how do we learn this tending from the natural world, from the waters, from the land, from our animal allies and plant allies, right? These are the things I'm really thinking about and concerned with, right? Um, Another word I would use is remembrance. Like, how do I remember? And how do we remember who we are? Right? I'm not a race, I'm not my gender, I'm not class, right? I'm not even my body. Like, who am I? Right? Like, who am I in my most basic common denominator that links me with all other beings in this world system?
Hmm. Yes, to all of that.
Mhm.
I talk about remembering a lot, like the same questions. Who are we? What are we doing? What can we begin to remember? How do we remember ourselves, right? The truth of who we are. not all of the labels, the identities, even as we reckon with that here on the relative plane. And I'm thinking about practices because, and I know you have many, and I have many, and you mentioned listening, and this is one reason why I go and sit out with my hives when
Right.
I'm home every day to
Mhm.
listen, to observe, to be in relationship. I always notice something new or different. I also honor how close I am to them. They let me know if I'm too close or they want me to get closer, and I listen in that way too, because they're doing work that is mysterious in some ways that I'm not a bee, so I don't fully understand it, and yet I yearn to like really understand everything they're doing because I want to learn from them and position myself as a student in the way we've talked about. And I'm wondering what people often have, they have a question about practices, like
Yeah.
in the noise of the world, in the chaos.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious to know what practices you might uplift
Yeah.
or offer, knowing that there are many you could offer to people. Just
Yeah.
curious about that.
I mean, mm, one of my most profound practices is being on the land, right? And even yesterday, I spent the day up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which is about hour and a half, 2 hours north, straight north up from here, which is Atlanta. So I'm living in Atlanta, straight up north. You get into the Blue Ridge and just walking the land, talking to the land, offering to the land, right? Offering to the waters. Like the natural world is full of medicine, right? So I find myself in the woods, in the mountains, just sitting, touching the earth, right? Breathing, like opening my heart, right, to the energies of the elder trees, right? And for me, that is a returning back to what feels like my most natural self, right? Like so I think we get so distracted in our lives with the drama, the busyness, the chaos, right? It's just like trying to keep up with systems that are collapsing day by day, right? Trying to outrun the collapse, when in fact the collapse is inviting us to slow down, right? To come and sit on the earth, to lie on the earth, and to feel the earth, the land rising, to hold you, to feel who you are as a being surrendering to what I call the mother, right? I call the earth the mother, to feel the mother rising to reclaim you, to remember that our bodies are expressions of the mother and the mother is an expression of our bodies, right? To get into that deep, deep simplicity, right? Like we're too complex. It's too much complication. How do we return back to the simplicity of simply being held, right? Because as you're being held by the mother or by the earth, right, you're also allowing your heart to break and allowing the mother, the land to rise, to tend, to cradle that brokenheartedness. Right. And I encourage everyone to return back to the land in some way, to walk barefoot on the land, to sit by the waters, right? To allow the waters, the energy of the waters to rush through you, to move through you. The waters being yet another expression of the mother, right? Um, like we need to remember, right? We need to remember that the natural world is more than something to consume, or it's more than just pretty pictures, right? Or it's more than just piles of dirt, right? That we're trying to avoid. It is our true home as animals, as organisms. Like we descended from the earth, right? And likewise, we will return back to the earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? which for me, of course, we keep bypassing that, which is also a sign of how we try to bypass death and all these natural cycles of body, right? Like this is what we need to remember, right? That death is not a punishment, it is what happens, right? And I think the natural world, our plant and our animal and spirit allies, right, are trying to reflect that back to us, asking us to return back to cycles, natural cycles, not these artificial cycles that have been perpetuated by systems, but the natural cycles. And I know like you see this so much sitting with the bees, right? Because I feel like I'm the only person in my life that doesn't tend to bees. So it's like I get bee wisdom all the time. I have friends sending me jars of honey. Like I am like getting it. But I don't think me and the bees have made friends yet. you know, but one day, right? But like this wisdom that I think flows as sweet as the honey that they produce, right? Honey itself, right? I mean, it is one of the most powerful animal products on this planet. Like we use honey in so many rituals for beacons, for aspirations to call in the sweetness of things, right? And it's such a sacred substance, right? And we offer it to the great mothers, we offer it to Yamayag, we offer it to Oshun, right? The great Orishas, the great mothers, right? And these traditions, but that sweetness is full of such labor, and I forget the numbers, but what takes thousands of bees to produce like a
A
drop?
teaspoon, yeah,
Uh,
thousands of bees.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that's potent magic, right? And what can we learn from that? I offer gratitude when I taste honey. I am grateful for the labor that our allies, our family have created for our consumption, right? And I want to return that labor in some way for the benefit of all beings, right?
I love this that we got to this place of you began actually in your response of offering things to the land, and then this place of honey and how medicinal it is, and how much they labor, and then what do we offer in return? And as you named, I mean, honey has been used throughout all time and space for healing, to heal wounds, physical wounds, but heart wounds as well, to make medicine. Um, and along with honey and sweetness, there's a chapter in the book about sweetness, and there's a chapter before that about the sting also being medicinal. And so I'd invite us to consider
Mhm.
both as medicinal. Like I love honey too. And I've also been told part of my medicine is to deliver the sting.
Mhm.
Is and not in a, bees die when they sting you, with the exception of the queen bee, and males don't sting. It's the worker bees, the bee sisters, that have that responsibility of protecting their hive when they feel threatened, to deliver that sting, to try to disrupt that threat, which is not easy medicine to carry, and there's sacrifice in that. So I want to offer that. And to me, the sting and sweetness are polarities. They're in deep relationship with one another. So yes, invite in the sweetness. And also there's an activity in the wisdom of the hive of receptivity to the sting, to the truth, to the medicine that comes in these ways that doesn't feel so good. If you're allergic to bees, I understand. I'm not allergic, so I'm just take care of yourselves. And also, I
Yeah,
don't invite in the sting, but I know that the bees are trying to teach me something when they sting me.
yeah.
I'm aware of that. And so that we hold both the honey and that labor, and the labor of delivering the alchemical venom that transmutes um, energy.
Yeah. Yeah, because the hardest medicines are the hardest ones, I'm sorry, the strongest medicines are the hardest medicines to take. It's the bitter herbs, that are doing the most healing, right? So when you talk about this thing in your book, which I really enjoyed, like, learning more about, it's like, I was like, yeah, they're absolutely right. Right. Yeah, I can see this as a nuisance. I can see this as an attack, or I can see this as getting my attention, right? Because maybe I have crossed a boundary that I need to be aware of, right? As we're all always crossing boundaries, and the truth arises to let us know, okay, listen, like you need to pay attention to this because if you keep going, you will harm. And we have to pay attention to our harm because that awareness is how we live in harmony, is how we live in balance. Right. Right now, I think also, just to briefly say too, and I talk a lot about the apocalypse. I think what the natural world teaches us too about collapse is that, you know, collapse is about coming back into balance, right? Something is off balance, and then that happens, and then things break down, and then the organisms of the ecosystem are reorganizing in conversation and relationship to the natural world to come back into the balance that will hold everything, right? And so we're coming back into a real balance, right? But that balancing and the collapse itself is accompanied by real grief, right? And I call it apocalyptic grief, right? And there's medicine in that grief. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My more than human furry companion was just barking. So I think there he is. That's Jasper, everyone, and he loves bees. And I appreciate what you named about apocalypse and grief and the medicine and the bitterness of it and the practice of also being with it and tending it. So thank you for listing that. And I think we have just a few more minutes before we transition to questions. There is one, thanks, Leslie. Jasper's like famous all over the world because he makes appearances all the time. I did want to just share because something people are often curious about is when the hive swarms. And to me, it relates to the us and collectivism. And when a hive swarms, it is an auspicious event, and it means the hive is healthy enough to split into two, and half of the hive leaves with the elder queen, and the rest of the hive stays with a virgin queen who has to take her maiden flight. And what I'm always struck by is when a hive swarms, I've been here. Three of my hives swarmed this spring, and I was home each time they swarmed, and I actually gathered my first swarm from one of the hives that swarmed in the apiary. So beekeepers talk about it as the hive giving birth, essentially. And what I'm struck by is that when a hive swarms, there's a lot of preparation that's gone into that. And they leave their home without anything except honey in their stomachs. And they land and they have to find a new home. And they send out these scout bees to go find that new home. And it's a democratic process. And a decision is made at a certain point that, oh, this will be the best home for us. We will go unless someone gathers them and provides a home for them, which is what I did. And I'm thinking about faith and that, what it means to be living during this time of great uncertainty, and to also think about collectivism and swarming together and how we are we are who we have, and to have the faith and hope that we will find home or remember home. I'm always struck by that with the swarm and that energy. And so I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about that. What is offering faith to you or hope to you as we think about, I'm talking about swarming, right? But whatever that is for you, because that feels important too, and part of the sweetness and the trust in ourselves that we can save ourselves.
Yeah. Yes, right. And I intentionally use the word apocalypse right now because apocalypse is rooted in truth, unveiling. It's more than just systemic collapse. It is the truth reawakening, right? And when truth is really potent, it feels violent, right? And that goes back to the sting, right? It's like this feels like a force, this feels like violence, but in fact, it's the truth, right? And what I feel really hopeful about is how people are waking up to the medicine of this moment, right? Like I think people are like taking this seriously. This isn't just a moment. This is a shift in this world system, right? And you can look at different kinds of kind of paradigms, different like spiritual paths, different traditions many of whom are coming into alignment around this moment being a spiritual awakening, right? And so when I say spiritual awakening, right, and this is not to be really romantic about this because this costs. Spiritual awakening costs. This costs lives. This costs systems. Not all of us will survive in the body long enough to see the transformation of this world system. There are many of us who are leaving because of all kinds of things: genocide, famine, war, right? Not having access to basic resources like healthcare, food, right? And so forth. Like, not all of us are going to make this journey. That doesn't mean anyone is going to be lost. Because for me, death is not a barrier to anything. Death is just a continuation in different forms, right? So we have to hold this truth telling, and many of us are here to hold this space. And some of us are here doing that. Like some of us, we don't know what our activism is. Like we may not be on the front lines right now. We may not be organizing, but somehow we feel rooted. We feel stable. We feel the earth, right? We feel clear. Even though it's overwhelming, we still feel a clarity because we're grounding the energy that's awakening and shifting and bringing about this new world. And the new world is already here. And that's why I'm hopeful, because the new world has started, right? It's up to us to shake loose the shackles of the old world and to enter into a new liberated kind of embodiment, right? But we have to let ourselves die, or the old versions of ourselves need to be laid to rest, right? All these systems that have deeply indoctrinated identity and created hierarchies of violence and domination, those identities must die now, right? Because it is no longer appropriate for the new world. And the animal and plant allies know that, right? Animal and spirit and animal and plant consciousness are so revered and so important because those consciousness are so clear, right? There's such a clarity because that clarity is deeply rooted in a kind of harmony and empathy with the entire ecology, right? We're the ones, human consciousness, we're the ones with a lot of options, a lot of thoughts, a lot of distractions, right? The intellect creates too many options for us and we get distracted, you know? And so this is why we're coming back into student relationships with plant and animal consciousness. I know that was a long answer, but this is all the things I'm hopeful for, the remembering, right? The awakening, the truth. Though it hurts, it's hard, right? But that's the nature of the truth, particularly if you enjoy hiding out from it, as collectively
Hmm.
we have been doing for a long time.
Long time. Yeah. Thank you so much for all that you've shared through this conversation and your labor and your wisdom and your medicine. and for being here now. I mean, here on the planet
Mhm.
now. Um, Thank you. And of course, being here now too. And I know a few moments ago, Andy invited folks if they have questions to put them in the chat. And so, Andy, I don't know if any questions came through.
Not yet. We may have time for one, but I have a question. Um, I loved hearing your referencing, both of you, to indigenous teachings, and I'm curious about what specific traditions or teachings in the Buddhist tradition inform your relationship to plants and animals, each of you specifically.
Mhm. I mean, I would say interrelatedness, interconnectedness, that I belong to the world, right? I am connected. I am a member, an extension of the conscious community, right? And there are teachings in Buddhism that also really reveal the consciousness of plants as well, which is something that I deeply believe in, the consciousness of plants. And so there's a interrelatedness, like a belonging, right? Which is of course deeply tied to many, many indigenous wisdom cultures around the world. So that's where I'm linking these teachings for me.
Michelle?
Yeah. I was also seeing in the chat the swarm question come through, which will I can speak to in a moment. The same thing. I wrote down interconnectedness and also an interdependence, and also um, Lama Rod, you mentioned death as a continuation, and that teaching too. Like I labor now, and I um, try to practice not being attached to the outcome of all of this, because I am going to leave my body and I don't know when. And I want to trust that whatever labor will benefit the future in some way. And I won't know what that will look like. And so to me, that connects as well. It is a form of one of the teachings that's been offered to me, which is actually liberating for me to think about. It makes it easier for me to labor and also be prayerful in my practice, like to be reverent in my practice. And as I labor, um, instead of exhausted by laboring, like, um, I mean, sometimes I am overwhelmed by what I carry, and I'll remind us of what Ahlay offered. And also, how can I make my practice a prayer? um, Whether that's cooking for somebody, washing dishes, holding a space like this, teaching a class, sitting and watching the bees as a practice, like everything, valuing all of those as practices um, that will support, and also as labor that will benefit and ripple out. So there's more, but that's what came to mind, Andy. And I love that question. I think I was looking for Andy. Yeah.
Yes, Michelle, there was a question here from Anne. Do bees grieve when their members pass?
Such a good question. And I wish I knew. I know what I think, and yet I'm not a honeybee. And so I'm not sure about their rituals and practices related to when one of them passes. But given their unity consciousness, I know they feel that. They also have to tend with the bodies, right? Very directly to keep the hive clean. Um, and I imagine they feel that too. And I have lost hives. And sometimes the loss has been very quick, and other times it has been a slow loss, which means that at a certain point, hives have become too weak, and then parasites come in and other things impact them and quicken their death. And I know they feel that, because they recognize how many bees may be transitioning due to forces that are out of their control. And there's also something in that for us. So I'm sure they feel I imagine they feel that. And that's happened to at least one of my hives in the past. And because the telling the bees ritual, I imagine in different mythologies that there is wisdom about the bees as psychopomps who help transport souls from this realm to another, that they're adept at working with grief and birth and death. This is part of the practice and why we would actually tell them what we have, who we've lost, what transition we're in the middle of, so they can carry some of that. And because they're here on earth and they're also spiritual beings who work between these realms. Andy, do you see any other questions? I saw the question about Bridget's house or Bridget's, yes, house being swarmed 3 times. Like a lot of the bee teachers will tell you that bees choose us, and there's something so auspicious about the energy of a swarm landing in your space or near your space, and also to be close to something wild like that. Um, as I mentioned, who is, a swarm is waiting to find a new home. And so there's something in your home, your yard, something about the energy there that they return to. And I've heard this from other um, friends who have bees now, but didn't have bees for a long time, but bees kept swarming to their yard every year until they actually started to keep bees. That there was something about that energy of the swarm and preparation and faith that one will find a home and sweetness in the stomach, right? And that collective process of holding one another. So that's what I'd offer energetically. Any
Michelle.
other questions for Lama Rod? Or
Oh,
Andy,
yeah.
what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say I didn't see any other questions, but thank you both for this beautiful chat. And now Michelle is going to offer us another contemplative practice. And so I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yes, thank you, Andy. And thank you again, Lama Rod, for this beautiful conversation and connection. Um, it did my heart good to thank you for that. Um, and I'm going to invite us through this brief practice where we get close to the bees and where we will tell the bees what's present for us. So for this, it'll be a visualization. If you're afraid of bees, you can work with it or work with some other energy animal from the more than human world, a grove of trees, a pod of whales, right? Winged ones, if you prefer to imagine that as I say the words honeybees. So just offer that. And you can be in any posture your body wishes to find right now. The eyes can close or the gaze can soften. I invite you to return to the breath in your body. And to be grateful for the breath, your inhales and your exhales, and that we get to be in this space now. And in your mind's eye, as you breathe and begin to deepen your breath, I invite you to imagine you are as close as you wish to be, or as far away from a honeybee hive, or whatever animal energy you might be working with. And this honeybee hive might be in the base of a tree. It might be up high in a tree. It might be in a hive box. It might be in a skep, which is a reed basket, or some other vessel. So begin to imagine this in your mind's eye. Again, as close as you wish to be, or as far away, just observing and watching this hive come into being. And from the outside of the hive, I invite you to begin to notice what you hear, that hum, that buzz of the bees, the vibration. invite you to notice what you see. You might observe bees entering the hive, exiting the hive. What you smell, depending on the season and the time of day, you might smell what smells like fermentation, a little sweetness. This is when the bees make bee bread, which is food. You might also smell the sweetness of the nectar being transformed into honey as the bees take the water out of the nectar. You take 80% of the water content out of the nectar to transform it into honey. So notice what you see, what you hear, what you smell, and how you feel as you begin to commune with this hive. And if you were to go into the hive, you would see the bees working quickly, and depending on the season, in the spring they expand and build honeycomb, and there's a lot of brood and babies waiting to be born. There's a ton of pollen being brought in, and there's a flow of nectar as well. This continues into the summer until midsummer, and things begin to slow down as the bees look toward fall and winter. Depending on your region, there may still be a nectar flow. Here it slows down in North Carolina, and the bees prepare for the fall. If you were to go into the hive during the summer, you would even see this from the outside. If it's very hot and humid, the bees bring water in and create an AC unit to cool off the hive and keep the brood chamber at a specific temperature so the babies are viable, so they can sustain their hive. If it's the fall, they know they're getting ready for winter and continuing to bring in pollen and nectar as they can, and preparing to cluster for that cold, dark time that winter brings. If you were to go in during the winter time, you would see them clustered together. Bees in the center are the warmest, and then they rotate out to the edges so they can rotate who is experiencing the most warmth, so everyone can experience warmth. So you'd see different things if you went in, and all throughout the seasons, the queen is doing various things in the hive. As you commune with this hive, and as we begin to remember this unity consciousness and what it means to labor so that we can support one another and sustain the hive, I'll invite us into the practice of telling the bees. So, in your mind's eye, if you wish to imagine getting a little closer to the hive, the way this is practiced is we knock on the hive once. Imagine doing this gently, and then begin to tell the bees of what is present in your heart so that they can carry whatever is present for you: open-heartedness, broken-heartedness. Take a moment to share with them. And you might share the details of your life. You might share about the apocalypse that was shared about the many things we are grieving, things out of our control, some things in our control, the transitions or losses you've experienced or experience now. allow these amazing wild creatures, the holy, humble honeybees, to carry your grief, to be with it, to witness it, so that you do not have to carry it all. And then take a moment to thank the bees for their labor, for being with you and us, for teaching us, showing us, for holding some of your grief and what is present in your heart. You might thank them through word or song or silence. You might offer them a little bit of honey. You might tell them you will plant a field of lavender during the next season to plant lavender. You might tell them you will let the smart weeds grow so that they have forage during the dearth. You might bow to them. Make some offering to them now. And know that you can revisit this hive in your mind's eye whenever you need, whenever you wish to be in deep relationship with the honeybees and the more than human world. And you can gently begin to bring yourself back into your space and take a deep breath. Thanks for moving through that practice.
Thank you, Michelle, so much. Thank you, Lama Rod, so much. I'm going to offer you my best waggle dance as it's my expression of gratitude, channeling the bees. Um, I am now going to hand this over to my colleague, Derek Hosberg, to share more about something exciting that's cooking at Reimagine. But let me get this going. Okay, here we go. Ping.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you, Michelle and Lama Rod. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I do have a little creature who came and joined us for it too. I just want to share a couple exciting developments at Reimagine. So today's event may have stirred something in you or left you wanting to stay connected. And you might want more time to reflect, to share, just stay close to each other. By being part of this community, you have special access to our Reimagine Growth platform, a new space we have built where you can continue the momentum of this experience in your own way. Through social journaling, you can share your stories and connect with others doing the same. I want to note that this entry on the right side of the slide is from an early tester who gave us permission to share her posts. But that just gives you a little taste of what the platform is about. So on the platform, you can share your journey through reflections, creations, dreams, and actions, or keep your entries private and only visible to you. Explore what others choose to share with the Reimagine community. Offer and receive support by holding space, a unique feature that invites you to show up, slow down, and share intentions. And in this example, also shared by permission, my colleague has reflected on a dream she had days before her mom's death, and others have held space for her. And because you are here today and you're part of this community, you can join the platform through one of our growth pathways, a self-guided journey rooted in post-traumatic growth. And this pathway is called Reimagine Life's Challenges, and it is an entry point to the site that offers wisdom and inspiration to help you deepen into reflection, creation, dreams, and actions. It's totally free, and you get to control what and how you share. As early participants, your presence, voice, and feedback will help shape this for others. So I'll be posting in the chat how to join. And also, I will say I am going to be launching a group pathway that uses the platform, but is um, uh, a 10-week long experience that you meet weekly in groups and go through a series of reflections and work on an independent project. I'm not going to go into details, but I will put the link in the chat if you want to sign up. But just note that there is limited space. So if you do want to sign up, I would do that shortly, and it launches next week.
Thank you, Dara. Finally, please complete our survey. We're going to be pasting that in the chat too. We'd love to know what you thought of this experience with Michelle and Lama Rod, what we might improve. We also want to know what your interests are. We want to get to know you. So please fill out that as well. I want to share a bit about some upcoming events. Of course, we have our next session on November 19th of the Wisdom of the Hive series. We've got Omishadi Bernie Scott, Ariella Daly, and Aditi Sethi joining Michelle, so please register for that. Also, in the next several months, we're promoting events hosted by our wonderful community of Reimagine collaborators. They are offering experiences related to themes in Wisdom of the Hive. That includes death loss, bereavement, climate grief, collective trauma, and loneliness. And here are just a few of the upcoming events led by Henry Cameron Allen, Sherry Balul, Jessica Sharp, and Ken Brenneman. So please join us. We'll paste a link in the chat about Wisdom of the Hive also. Also, we have our next virtual candlelight vigil. These happen monthly at Reimagine, and it's a space to hold all kinds of grief. We are featuring poets James Cruz and Kai Coggin, as well as musicians Sarah Elizabeth Charles and Jarrett Cherner. Also, I wanted to give a brief plug for our capstone event this year. It's on December 3rd. This year in grief, next year in hope. We'll be hearing from 7 luminaries in grief, spirituality, creativity, and personal development. We're providing a space for all of you to reflect on what we've been mourning in 2025 and to name what we're yearning for in 2026. So that's it. Let's go into gallery mode. If we can all do a little waggle dance to say goodbye and thank you. Hope to see you all soon at Reimagine, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, y'all. Take care. Be well.